Hey YouTube, Andres here. So I want to try a VOD style video in addition to the episodes that I'm planning on doing to kind of just get in my thoughts on things that are going on in the community, going on this week, and just also to create more content that is useful and interesting. So let's give this a go.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
So this week we have a controversial, or I guess a large discussion post around a tweet by Adam Coble, stating, "The most significant change I think D&D needs to make it really work as an RPG as show is a way to maintain character throughout the campaign without taking the fangs out of the system. An alternate to death failure state." And he later states as well, "And not like critical injuries. They need to feel like they're in danger." So this sparked a lot of discussion for a number of reasons. One, should rules for streamers be in D&D? And two, a larger general discussion about lethality in D&D. So for the first part about streamer rules being in D&D, it's not really about the streamer. This is more about the flow of gameplay for anybody, really. How a game, when you have 20 people watching, or whether you're with your friends, dying sucks because you lose your character. But I see the need for wanting the Fangs of Death, because without the threat of death, players will play more recklessly or get away with more or act without that threat of death being imminent. So I see the need for a rule set that, or a modified or an alternative set of rules that would allow for players to not die, but have that threat or equivalent threat of death being there. Now, for the second part, the general conversation around death in D&D in general, I see a lot of correlations to how we look at death or difficulty in video games. This has been, several years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago, we had this large discussion about the casualization of games, and now you're always the epic hero. We went from Oblivion to Skyrim, and the mechanics got simpler, you're not dying, you're becoming more epic, it's following on this hero trope fantasy, you don't die, or nothing happens when you die, you just reset and reload. And now we come to games like Dark Souls and Cuphead, where you die, you start over. Or the punishments for death actually mean something. You lose your souls, you lose your sanity, you go hollow. And we've had this revival in the past couple years, and I'm wondering, or seeing this trend coming in D&D, where there was a lot of critique on the deadliness of the system. Now, yes, GMs can tweak things and limit players' resources in order to make it more dangerous, but when it comes down to it, when you kill a player, you run into the same problem the streamer does, and you've got a player that's now out of action for 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, or even more, to roll up a new character that they might have been attached to, and they lose that. So how do we go about solving this? So I think we need to rethink a couple things. One, HP is not meat bag fleshiness. It should represent mental capacity, mental fortitude, endurance, willpower. And so when you go down to 0, it might not just be the flesh wounds. It might be something else that brings you over the edge, and that opens up more possibilities in terms of what death could be, or something like death, or a death-like effect. In addition, damage. Like, what we don't have... D&D doesn't have a lot of damage sources other than getting smacked in the head with a stick. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is right now. Now there are other saves, but they're not the majority. There's no endurance damage for mental fatigue or stress, insanity, just getting worn out. So I think handling death has to be random or up to the DM. I don't think there should be a consistent, this is the rule of how it goes. I think providing a list of options for the GM to swap between, one, keeps variety, and two, prevents the player from being reckless and falling to an optimum strategy of dealing with death, or anticipating the effect of when death occurs. And so to provide a list of options, here's a few that you could use or go by. One, the injury table. Instead of dying, a character takes on a serious injury. Another would be an affliction, such as like a Darkest Dungeon, where you become selfish, paranoid, irrational, or fearful. One idea is they're taken over by another entity. My example for this is like in the anime Bleach, Ichigo has this conversation with his sword every time he gets close to dying and has to fight it to the death, and if he fails, the sword takes over. Well, it's not really the sword, it's more complicated than that, but that's the premise. You could also look at this like from a 3rd edition artifacts idea where the ego of the artifact, if it was strong enough, it could take over the player character. This is something you could do. You could obviously do the deal with the devil. You could do hollowing or a soul scar or something of that equivalence of negative levels. You could have some progression to a beast or a moment where the player becomes the beast that must be defeated. So that just adds to the challenge of the party. So not that the death is meaningful in the sense, but the player becomes out of control for that time and becomes dangerous for everyone else. That's just a few ideas I've got. There'd probably be a few more if I spent more time thinking about it, but here are the thoughts that I had on it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked the video, please subscribe. Check out what else we've got. There will be more to come. And thank you very much. This is Andreas Walters, and this is Roleplay Cafe. Thank you.
Yep, it's made with bits of real panther, so you know it's good.
It's quite pungent.
Oh, yeah.
It stings the nostrils. In a good way.
Yeah.
Brian, I'm gonna be honest with you, that smells like pure gasoline.
60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.